Okay. How's Namibia, Freddie?
Namibia is good. It's
warming up.
Obviously dry and getting hot here, but it's good. Can't complain. So the south of Namibia had some rain this on Friday. So which is unique. Doesn't happen. I wouldn't say often, almost never. So it's the first.
Okay, good. I'm going to be heading to the south part at the beginning of November for a few days.
Okay. Yeah, so that will be beautiful because with that, the desert, obviously semi-desert, obviously if it gets a little bit of rain, it's awesome to see, and it will be green.
Yeah, we're going to the II park, so hopefully get to see some flowers and things.
Yeah, no, it will be beautiful.
Good morning.
Morning, Brendan, and well done, buddy.
Hey, thank you.
Jeez.
You want to make me feel awkward here? I'm just kind of gonna hide and
Morning.
Brendan, you feel awkward a lot, don't you?
I do. I'm very shy. It's a problem. I've got this 2-hour interview with the FPI on Thursday, and I'm excuse my French, I'm shitting a brick. So
just be yourself.
Dude, Brendan, what's gonna happen when you have to go on stage to collect your award and then give a speech?
I'm gonna cry. Oh no. Look, I'll take it as it comes, guys. It's thankfully my shyness and awkwardness is made up by the fact that I'm quite a nice and sincere person, thankfully. So yeah, as long as I give a good account of myself, I mean, it's the best I can do. I'm just gonna look everywhere and go ooh ah and try hide. But yeah.
No, just be yourself, man. Be yourself.
Yeah.
That's why you got chosen. It's for you, so you don't need to be anyone else. Yeah.
No, that's it. That's exactly it. You got to be strong in what you believe in this industry. You got to be yourself, and you just got to try and give the best account of yourself and of the business that you represent, and show them what you want to do, what you're trying to achieve here, and that's it. Yeah, I'm going to be interested to know what. The one thing I am sweating on, though, they send you. So previously they gave you lists of topics that they wanted you to kind of prepare for and be ready for. So I'm like, cool, I can do that. Now it's like they send you a very vague thing. It's like, cool, latest trends, latest legislation changes. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be an AI question and a Kofi question and a couple of other things, but I'm just waiting for that. I mean, what can I do? I can do the best I can, but I'm just waiting for that curveball, and I'm gonna be like, I don't know what that is. Okay, good. Nah, we'll give it our best shot. It's quite a few people. It's like 5 or 6 people, hey. So it's gonna be interesting. I'm just gonna try my best to engage with them, and enough talking about me. Stop making me awkward.
No, you'll be fine, and you must remember that a lot of those people. Well, I think you've got some previous winners there, so they've all been in the chair. So I think they'll appreciate your situation. But yeah, listen, well done, because I entered years ago and I didn't get as far as you did. But I know it's a hell of a lot of work, and I know it's actually really good for you to do it as well, because it makes you look at your business, your practice from all angles. So, get to the last 3 is great. So well done.
I would encourage everybody here to give it a go. Honestly, like it really does make you interrogate, and think about what you believe in and what you value, and where you can improve. So yeah, that's all I can really say is I'm grateful for it, and I'm astounded to have gotten so far, to be honest.
Great, man. Yeah. And I've got my big screen on. Geez, it's so lucky to see everyone's faces. Sometimes I feel like I'm talking to myself, but as I said earlier, guys, I think these are special sessions. We've been running them for, I don't know, Simon, how long have we been running this for? Russell,
is it not 3 years, or is it longer?
I think it's longer.
Yeah, it was like 3 or 4 years. I remember
before COVID.
It was longer because like I remember Dirk contacted me like when it was like my second or third year in the profession. It was like 8 or 9 years ago or something. I was still a mutual back then. And then we
Well,
met
Alex,
at the
Alex,
Summerton offices.
Alex was still new with me as well then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Remember,
think it was
Alex, 'cause
about,
we got
yeah, it would
we
have
got
been
you
about
guys all in.
2019, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right. It's actually
Yeah.
it's almost 6 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think my point is just that, you know, I mean, we're doing this once a month, and I've said from the start that this is a group that certain people will grow out of, and that's absolutely, there's nothing wrong with that. It's normal. You know, it all depends where you are within your career and within your business. And for those of you that were here from the start and have stayed, I do appreciate that, Alex, Simon, and Russell, because it shows that you're giving back as well. But there's, you know, if someone decides to leave for a while or whatever, there's absolutely no problem. I just, you know, I've got this like list of people, and a lot of people aren't active, and I just think, because as I've said before, because I started this, I can do what I want. I think it's quite important that, you know, we create a culture of giving back, because that's really what our industry, what our profession needs is people who are in all different phases of their career, all different ages, and you know, we can all learn from each other. So it's fantastic to see everyone online. So yeah, there was a post, you probably would have seen it. It was a Matthew Jarvis post, who you guys know. It's probably one of the more controversial guys on LinkedIn. He's a really good planner, both I think in the work that he does, and then very successfully financially as well. Written a book which I've read, which is really good, and it raised the thing, you know, which we've all, I think those of us who watch or listen to the Trap podcast as well, you know, they've coined this phrase called a NARC, which is a never advised a real client, you know, and it refers to a lot of experts that are around that that claim to know how we should be working and how to run our businesses and how to treat clients and how to prospect and do all these things, but a lot of them have never actually done it themselves. Now, I must say that there are a lot of people out there who don't directly advise clients, but who do add serious value, who through their experience or through their special skills can. So all I'm saying is that we just got to be careful, I think, who we listen to. Because, you know, we can get caught up, especially, you know, when I started 35 years ago, I mean, the interweb didn't exist, you know, let alone cell phones or WhatsApp groups or LinkedIn or anything like that. So you literally met other advisors when you went to a investment presentation. In those early days, yeah, I wasn't even a CFP. So you interacted very little with people in the industry, and the people you did mix with were, you know, the guys who sold the most were the most successful. Well, financially, I suppose they are. But it was very old school, and obviously since then there's been massive change in how the industry operates and how I think how the value that we add to the clients that we serve. And today, obviously, because, you know, at a finger's touch, you know, you can wake up in the morning, lie in bed, and spend the next 2 hours just reading through either X or LinkedIn posts around financial planning or whatever. And as I said, a lot can be helpful, but I think of a lot of it probably isn't, and especially for new advisors coming in. And I just think, you know, we need to kind of demystify some of these things. And yeah, I just wanted to chat about that because I think, as I've said a lot before as well, is this is a really, really tough profession to make it in. It really is hard, no matter how you go about setting out, how we start, and we can all do it in different ways. But it's really not easy. For some people, you know, there is an easier start if we perhaps join a business where we don't have to be searching for clients from day one. But I think for a lot of us, that's kind of how we started. And I think there are pros and cons to both of those. But yeah, I mean, Yeah, so I think I'll just kick it off with obviously, explain all, we all know what a NARC is now. And again, I qualify it because there are people who do add value, who don't do what we do. But generally, I've always respected people who are doing what we do on a day-to-day basis, even if they're in a situation where they don't need to be searching hard for clients, and they're getting referrals or they've built up a nice business. I'll be careful of using the word a book of business, but because we deal with people, not with books or pages. But yeah, does anyone else, I've asked you all to give it a little bit of thought. Does anyone want to kick off with anything? I've got a list of things that I can refer to and we can get into, but anyone, Karan, there we go.
How's it? I just wanted to come back to your point where you mentioned you have to be careful who you listen to, especially when you start out in the industry. So I've been in the industry for about 2.5 years. And I went independent. I was with Sanlam. I was a title advisor. And I noticed that there's a limited amount of growth as a title advisor if you want to stay in this in the long run. So I decided to go independent. So now I've done that. It's been about 2 months. And I'm listening to a lot of people's feedback as to how they run their practice. And I've noticed that the fees is a big question mark for me, because even though I'm starting out, I do need to build that income. I do need to pay for fixed costs, but you get your minimum and your maximum bandwidth of what you're allowed to charge the client for your consultation or for fees, especially for investments. And the previous practice I was with, they were all investment specialists. And they charge 0.5 or 50 bips. And I see these independent advisors that I've been speaking to now, which is a new group of people. They are 1%ers. They charge 1% annual fees or recurring fees. So I wanted to ask you guys, because there's a moral dilemma. I understand the 50 bips, but then I also understand I need to also, earn the income and cover my fixed costs. So it's like a moral dilemma, because now the client is at a disadvantage now. And I'm at a competitive disadvantage now when I'm charging a higher percentage. So I wanted to ask your guys' opinion on how do you guys work with that, or what do you guys charge when it comes to or costs for fees, for advisory fees, if that's making sense.
No, Karen, absolutely. So in this group, we have the privilege of having people who charge on a very different basis. We have the AUM fee, we have flat fee planners, we have everything in this group. And I think my view is simply, I really don't care how you charge. I've seen great planners that when I started off, it was like eat what you kill kind of thing. It really was, and that's where I was. So I think there's too much focus on how we charge. I think the focus is, do we add value? Okay, and you need to learn what do you believe you're worth? Okay, and I think the reality is let's not fool ourselves, is that as we progress through our profession, how we charge will change, and that's absolutely fine. If you look at let's take a doctor, okay, does the Zuma years, qualifies, joins the practice as a GP, let's say then they study further, whatever. As you get more qualified, as you get more experience, as you specialize, you generally can charge more. As you do great work, and there becomes more of a demand for your skills because you get renowned at being really good at what you do, you can literally charge whatever you want. So I think there's too much discussion on how people charge. I've seen, as I said, I've seen AUM and flat fee and commissioned advisors who do brilliant work and who do absolutely terrible work. I think how you charge does not dictate the value of what you do. And I think, you said the word a moral dilemma. I think how you charge has got absolutely no bearing on your morals. You know, you either have good morals or you have bad morals. So we run a business where we have a sliding scale AUM fee. Okay, and I explain to clients that fee needs to pay for the business. It needs to pay for overheads. It needs to pay for staff. It needs to pay for licensing. It needs to pay for systems. And I explain to clients that, and it starts at 1% and then it slides down. If I started at 0.5%, instead of at the moment looking after 85 to 90 families, I would be having to look after 200 families. So, you know, my kind of, do you want to be one of 85 or do you want to be one of 200? And what that means is, well, that's how much time you're going to get or how much, you know, availability you're going to have. So I think what you need to do is don't worry about that. As long as you believe that what you're charging is fair, it's obviously within the bounds of the law. And as you go along, you're going to slowly kind of I promise you, 20 years ago, how I visioned my business would look like was very different to what it looks like today. And it's still going to change. And I'm 57. So I don't think, you know, I think you mustn't restrict yourself. It's good to have a plan and it's good to have a vision of what you want. But I don't think that how you charge is any reflection of the quality of the advice that you give and the kind of advice that you give clients. I look at it that I'm looking to build long-term relationships. If you're looking to be a risk specialist where you're focusing on risk and you're taking commission, that's cool. That's your speciality. You're going to focus on estate planning. You're going to get clients in. They're going to consult. Once off, you earn a consulting fee or you earn commission on the buy and sell, whatever, and off they go again. You get people who do that. You get people who are financial coaches who don't want to implement for the client. They just want to advise them. You know, I can have my view on that, but it doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. It's if you get clients and that's what they're looking for, then that's absolutely fine. Anyone else on that subject? No other views. Okay, next stand up is Russell.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I think just I agree with you, Dirk. I think that's another thing that you guys will probably see a lot on LinkedIn about. And I think there's always a lot of talk around like fees. And I think in just my professional experience, what I've seen is that people are missing the mark. Because like it actually, no matter which way you charge, as long as you are adding value, I think that's the main key thing. And just from my experience and also how we've been working with clients, we found out actually, or with revising our whole process over the last year or so, being upfront and clear to your clients about what your fees are from the start makes such an important vital role. Because first and foremost, if you don't charge, and you know, I think just to Karan, I also made this issue as well. I don't charge 0.50% or 50 pips when you're my clients, you know, unless my extremely wealthy clients add more, then we also have a scaling system. But I used to also discount my fees in the start because I thought, okay, I'm helping the client. And it was also from my poverty mindset of like, you know, I need this client to kind of get more business. But then what you actually find out is that you're actually creating a bad environment for which you're working in, or cadence as you call it, because then the client's going to have that expectation of like, okay, you discounting your fees, I'm going to expect that discount every time. And also what you're not realizing is that you're translating to the client like, I'm discounting my value, so I'm cheap, I can't really add value, and that's why I've dropped my fees. And then secondly, another big thing we've just picked up with the whole process is just some of the few points that come to mind is that, remember now, you can give the most amazing experience as well. But then, especially if you give a discounted fee and you get referrals from that client 9 times out of 10 is going to tell their referrals of like their experience and their fee offering. So before they even come and meet you for new business or new prospect, they already have that expectation of like, he's going to give me a discount because he's given so-and-so or John and Sam a discount. And that's another thing where I found in my past experience, I made the mistake of, and it's, I would say I've learned a lot from it and we've cleaned up our book quite a lot, but you end up eventually filtering out those clients because those aren't actually the quality clients you want to deal with. And the harsh reality I also learned over the last few years is that I was chatting to Dirk about this when I went to St. Francis, but like we can't save everyone, unfortunately. Yes, we are here to like help people and make a difference. But there's only so many clients we can help. And by being upfront about your fee and like charging what you're actually worth or the value you add, it also will get the attention of the client. And that's another thing we pick up. So we have like a hybrid model where we also charge consulting fees aside from AUM and commission. And we find that by charging fees, we actually filter out the serious clients, the clients that are committed to change, because you can't be paddling the boat by yourself, right? So when you actually charge a fee to a client, we find compared to our older clients, the ones that are paying us are more committed, they're more aware, they're more prompt in communication. They don't ghost us, on emails or anything like that, or they don't become a hassle to communicate with. And we just find overall, aside from being good paying clients, I find, especially because we have only so limited time in the day and so much energy we can distribute, we get so much more fulfillment out of helping those clients more because they committed and we don't feel like we're paddling their financial boat by ourselves. So that's another big thing we've actually found is like by being upfront of what you charge and charging what your fair value is, you actually get the right clients and you will get clients that are committed to the process. Otherwise, if you get like the cheaper clients that you discount for, like I said, those clients will always expect discounts or more reduction in your fees over time where it becomes unprofitable and you can't serve them better. And then secondly, those will always be the clients that are unsatisfied or unhappy with you in the future. Yeah. I picked this up from a Crystal podcast where he said like, so many of us as business owners make the mistake of trying to help everyone when you realize you can't save everyone. And you find that you actually make a bigger difference or impact in the people that not only are paying, but the people that you can really make a huge difference in their finances or whatever help or change they need. Well, if you go for like not technically cheaper clients, but if you go for the clients that always want discounts or they don't see value in you, you will find no matter what you do, the level of impact or difference that you do for them and what they experience will always be minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they will always, whereas on the flip side, and I've been there, whereas like in my early years, it's like you might be bending your backwards for everything, helping them, going to have annual reviews, meetings. I mean, we cut out a lot of clients from our old book quite a while back that were clients that they had the capacity to get their finances sorted. And we gave so much advice. And I was doing the 1 to 2 years reviews, even sometimes more, driving out to see them. And this was in my early years of when I was working on mutual. And I was making like R5 a month off their investment book in terms of AUM fees. Yeah, like I was like, they were like small clients.
Yeah,
and I was
that's
like,
where I'm at. I'm thinking like, what's the value in that when using all this effort? But I know it compounds.
yeah,
But I'm also in the early phases, so I'm still trying to find my way and trying to understand what's the best move on the chessboard to kind of get the thing rolling in the long
yeah.
run.
And also with those type of clients, which you learn also over time, those were not just clients from once off. Like I had actively tried for like some of them for 3 years to try and improve their financial situation. And they had capacity to invest more, improve their situation or change their behaviors or patterns. And I was like coaching them, but they didn't do anything. It kept on becoming like I was just doing the same thing every year and they wouldn't be willing to change. And that's also where like eventually if you keep having a lot of those clients, eventually without realizing you start resenting your profession or losing passion for like what you do because you're like, I'm trying so hard, I'm pouring my heart and soul into these clients, but they're not even willing to change. And then what ends up also is like you realize like I'm not even being paid properly for my time. I'm making a huge loss on this. So why is it so difficult, So I think also that's just from my experience. And I think also once you also thought out or you're upfront in the first meeting about how you charge and what your process is, that also helps you to deal with like the right clients that also give you more momentum and joy of like, okay, those are the right type of people I want to deal with. And also it helps you to niche down like what is your target market as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's simple. I live in St. Francis. There's a lot of building going on here. So there are a lot of builders. There are builders who are qualified. There are builders who aren't qualified. There are cheaper builders. There are expensive builders. I promise you, when you're building your place, you want a good builder. You obviously don't want necessarily the most expensive, but you want a good builder. But expensive doesn't mean they're good. Cheap doesn't normally mean that they might run away with your money. So I don't think if we're doing real financial planning, whatever you do, you don't want to be cheap. And Karen, you're quite right. When you're starting off, some clients don't have a lot of wealth. If you're charging for an AUM basis, then that's understand that. But work with clients that you get along with. And clients that are difficult from the beginning, they're going to be difficult down the line. They're going to break your heart down the line. So practice self-care. Okay, Brian, do you want to say anything? I'm not picking on you. I'm just because, everyone knows that you guys run a very successful flat fee business. And I think for you, it's probably because it's having not been young in this industry, having been in other businesses before this, for you, your way of charging was comfortable for you versus some of the more traditional ways.
Yeah, no problem. I don't have too much to add. I think a lot has been said already. I would just say that forget anything you know about how people normally get paid in this profession, because it doesn't really matter. What matters is you sitting by opposite the client, and if you genuinely believe you add value, you should charge for that. And so one of the reasons why I started charging the fee that I do charge is because I was working with younger people who didn't have a lot going on, in a sense of they were cash flow rich but asset poor. And so I just started sucking numbers out of my thumb and saying, pay me 3,000 a month or 4,000 a month or 2,000 a month. And they would say yes. And then also just for consultations, if someone wanted to meet with me, and then I would just say, this is how much it will cost. And then they were just saying, okay, so it's just try and get paid for what you do up front. And if you don't want to do that, then just only go for people who have sufficient AUM, so it's like kind of pick a lane, I think. So sufficient AUM is going to be old people. So go for old people and try and work with them. And if it's not that old people, it's younger people who you attract, who you seem to be referred to, start charging, because they might need risk cover up front. But it's a once-off, like a dopamine hit. It's not really a long-term kind of income. And just try to think of what you can do for that person on an annual basis, not just up front. How you can add value to that person's life, because when you start charging a fee that, say you want someone to pay you 6,000 or 4,000 Rand a month, you need to think long and hard about what you do and what value you add to someone's life. And it's not about dancing for them every month. We have 2 interventions a year for clients, that's it, but they pay us 12 times a year. So it's just about, you got to think long and hard about the value you add, which is not something us advisors have ever been forced to do. It's just value what you do. And if also another bit of like input is, if you also want to understand what it's like, just hire your own advisor and go through a process with someone who's good, someone who has a very detailed, lengthy process. So you can see what it's like, and you can see what value the process adds as well. And once you've been through that, you will probably feel like, how have I not charged, maybe for this work we've done with people, because it's so valuable, and how have I not charged well? So, yeah, but I think a lot of what can be said has already been said by the others.
Thanks, Brian. Becky, you've had your hand up for a while. Sorry. Becky, you there? Okay, Shannon.
Yes, I'm
sorry, Becky, there you are. Okay.
Yeah, I was trying to unmute myself. I'm just helping my wife with the kids, so sorry I'm not putting my video on. I think when I put my hand initially, I was actually gonna comment on your point around, like different things for different advisors, and the fact that a lot of people like comment what's been successful for them. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think invariably it creates sort of like a sense that this is the right way to do it. I think, like Karen, when you say like a moral question, I agree with you, Dad, completely. I mean, the way you charge has got absolutely nothing to do with it. So I think what has been said by most people, I totally agree with that. Because at the end of the day, there's many ways of doing this, and what works well for you might completely not work for the next person. And I think that's the point to make. But I think the point I was going to make, Dick, earlier on is like one thing I've sort of enjoyed this session, this platform, is the fact that there's many people with different perspectives. I mean, like for example, you mentioned now, you've made this comment before that ideally you want somebody who's actually been successful as an advisor giving input. But I mean, for those that don't know, I mean, when I started off, I started off actually as an analyst, my career, and then moved to be a financial advisor for just a short period, 2.5 years ago. I mean, that period I was actually #1 advisor for PFA in Joburg, and then I moved to become a consultant. But I mean, I've worked with advisors most of my career as a consultant, but not as an advisor, if that makes sense. And I mean, for the guys that I've worked with, I mean, I've worked with guys that have been very, very successful. Some of them don't understand why I'm still a consultant, not just an advisor, right? So I think that's a fair point as well to say, you don't necessarily have to get value from someone who's necessarily, been a successful financial advisor. I think that's generally true, Dick, and you and I joke about that. I think generally true, it is good to listen to somebody who's actually been successful in something. But I mean, take a topic, for example, financial coaching, right? So the best coaches in the world are not necessarily financial advisors. So if you want to develop your skill as a coach, you might have to listen to somebody who's an expert in behavioral finance, who's a very established, sort of coach, but they're not necessarily going to be the best person to advise you on, what is the best pricing model as an advisor, for example. So I think whilst it's important to say it's important to listen to other successful advisors, I think there's also a risk as well in over glorifying people that have been successful financially. Right? I mean, I've worked with a lot of people in the industry. I mean, some people make a shitload of money, but that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. So just being successful does not necessarily mean you're better. So I like that, and I know Dick, you obviously balance it quite well to say yes, you want to look at somebody who's been successful, but I think it's also important to look at expertise as well. Actually listen to people that actually know what they're talking about and are potentially, sort of deep subject matter experts on a particular topic that might be of interest or relevance to you. So I think our industry is quite nuanced, and I think often I find a lot of people don't really understand, engage with nuance very well, or not this crowd obviously, right? So I think my sort of small contribution and the point I wanted to make at the beginning very is that yes, listening to other successful financial advisors is important, but also just understanding what is going to work for you and why, right, is equally important. And around the issue of pricing, absolutely nothing to do with morals. I mean, Michael Kitces did a nice research around even the clients themselves, so I don't know who talked about the flat fee. So I mean, great for them. I mean, if you can pull off the flat fee model, I mean, you're a fantastic advisor, right? I think right. But the reality of the matter is that most clients actually prefer the AUM fee model. So if you're trying to build a business in a way that is actually just likely that has got better odds of being successful with less stress, the AUM model is probably going to work better for you if you're obviously working with all the clients with your money. So nothing, any of the models will work as long as you're adding value, you understand the clients that you're trying to work with, and it just sort of suits you naturally because of your own style, preference, whatever the case. Then I think great. So, I mean, that's quite a long monologue, but hopefully, I'm making some sense in my. But Karen, I mean, the fact that you're reflecting on it, and it's a good point. But I mean, don't beat up yourself. Zero, I mean, relationship to morals. It's and I think some of that comes from a lot of these people sort of like talk around what's been successful for them, and are almost coming across as like judging other people that are doing it differently. That's absolutely nonsense. Because if it's working for you, fantastic, that's great. But it's not a gospel truth, right? It's just your truth, and that's all. I think that's
yeah. Thanks, Becky. Yeah, I think you're right. I think we are all very different. I mean, just look at this group. Brendan, we started off joking about you being uncomfortable, and you know, we've got all kinds of people in this group. We've got people who are more extrovert. You know, we've got vets, we've got actuaries, we've got I'm sure there are many other professions, and everyone's different. Everyone's got a different family setup. Everyone's got slightly different needs at different times in their lives. And I think as long as our heart is what we're doing and we're trying to help people, I think that's where the focus is. That's what drives me, and that's that. Shannon, you got your hand up.
Thanks, Dirk. Karan, and something that I found useful in my way of thinking in terms of fees and that. I mean, we've got our fixed costs that have to be paid, irrespective of whether the client's got 500 Rand a month to invest or 10 million Rand to invest. And that to me is where the distinction comes between separation between having a planning fee and an ongoing fee. So when we sit down with the client initially, we will bill them for doing the financial plan for them. And it might turn out that the products that they have in place suffice and they can be implemented into it. And that's when we then step into the ongoing fee. So initially upfront, we bill for a planning fee for doing the plan. Whether the client wants to do future business with us or not. So yeah, charge that planning fee. Get that in your head that you charge that planning fee upfront. It's separate from everything else. And how I did it initially in the as well was once I've done the planning fee, we can then work out a way of how I get paid that planning fee. And I'll discount the planning fee account by any upfront commission earned if there's some risk products, for example, with the understanding that if those risk products left within the 2 years, well, then the planning fee is going to be credited again and the client must pay me what's due to me. So, you know, it's those kind of things that there's ways around it. And then we step into the ongoing, and that's where we will then charge an AUM fee. And again, it works on a tiered scale because there's certain fixed costs that we need to cover, but once those are covered, we can then reduce it. So it's not about me giving less value. It's about being paid for what we do.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Russell, I see you got your hand up. I want to move on from this because there's a lot more that we can cover. Russell, anything quickly, or is it okay?
Yeah, I think just quickly, I just wanted to add on is like, and I mentioned this in the chat as well, but like, just on 2 quickly points, like what Becky said as well, it's like, yeah, like everyone, you know, everyone has a different way of doing things. So I would say for any like new advisor out there, try it and then see how it works for you. You know, it might work for them, it might not work for you. Try that out first. And then secondly, and most importantly, it's like, and I took this lesson from Brian about a year back as well, but like, you know, and I realized this about 2 or 3 years ago, we keep on waiting for like the FBI or professional providers to like change the industry or us to be seen as professionals, but like we have the power. So you need to create that cadence. If you set out how you work and how you put in charge and all that, the client then will see you as a professional. But if you're waiting for someone to do it and then you have an issue with fees and all that, you know, you'll still struggle. So rather, yeah, how you do things and how you set yourself up from the first meeting and position your fees and your process and everything differentiates you from the industry. And also like full transparency will pull the client more in as well. And yeah, for any clients that you also use that first meet and greet with the client to qualify for yourself if this is a client I want to work with. And it doesn't mean saying, no, I'm not going to help you. You could just simply say, I can help you, but I would like divert them to like Easy Equities or doing it on the app or Alan Gray call center, for instance. There's ways you can like still give them good direction without taking them on as a client, you know? So just that. Thanks.
Sorry, just one quick thing. Karan, just please email me a brief outline of your ideal client and who you want to work with, because we refer away so many people, it's ridiculous. So if I can refer some to you, that'll be cool. But then also I'd just like to meet with you first, okay?
No, thanks, Brian. Can you put the email on the chat? I'll quickly grab it.
I'll do that, no problem.
Cool, guys. Okay, one thing is the use of language. Okay. We come up with all these things like simple, like what do we call ourselves? When I started, you were a financial advisor. No, yeah, you were a financial advisor if you worked for, I started with Southern Life. Okay. Then if you went independent, you were a broker. Okay, and those were accepted terms. So a broker simply meant that you had probably more than one contract. It could mean you have 2. It could mean that you have 1, but you're actually working not directly with a life company in the field force. And I mean, this is something I've been guilty of as well. Or I don't know if guilty is the right word, but you try and differentiate. So then you go to you've got a wealth planner, and you've got a wealth manager, and you've got a financial planner, and you've got a lifestyle financial planner, which we call ourselves. And I think the reality is that a lot of this actually causes more confusion amongst the public than anything else, because I think what we're calling ourselves often can reflect where our passion lies. But it's, to the general public out there who don't do what we do every day, I think financial advisor, they understand what that means. It's someone who's going to help me with my finances. There are very few people who will go onto Google and look for someone who is a financial coach. I think there's very few people that would do that. There will be a few. So when people ask what we do, I remember in the early days trying to differentiate myself, and guys would just laugh at me, and I think we just got to own what we do. It is simple. We're all financial advisors. We have different levels of skill in different areas, and we maybe focus on doing our job in a certain way, in a different way to what others may do. But there's nothing wrong with calling yourself a financial planner or a lifestyle planner or whatever. But I think we just got to be aware that it can confuse people out there. I've had people here in St. Francis. Guy came and said, "Listen, I want to see you. I didn't realize what you did, because we lifestyle financial planners, and this guy's Afrikaans. I'm not sure he could even read it." And he's been very successful. I'm saying that in jest. But whatever was on our logo, he it didn't say to him, "Okay, this guy deals with money." And obviously we do a lot more than that. But the entry point to a lot of people that become clients is we deal with money or policy or investments. So I think just be aware of that. And I think the way we differentiate ourselves better is probably in the way that we do our work. But wealth engineer, that's a good one. And then another part that speaks to that is the letters that we have after our name. Like some guys, so Brendan, are you an engineer? Not okay. No, you're a CA. So you're CA. So we've got engineers, CAs, actuaries. Well, we've got so you got to BCom in all these things. I'm not saying it's unimportant, and I'm not saying that it makes your level of skill higher. It does, clearly. Okay. But I mean, when you go to the doctor, before you go to a doctor generally because you've been referred, or you kind of always gone to them, or he's in the area, or she's in the area. I mean, when you look at a doctor and they got all those BSc, CHs, and Phys, you got all that stuff. I've got no idea what it means. I've got absolutely no idea what it means. I know when I've been to them once, I'm comfortable with them. I know they've helped a friend. I know lots of doctors who have got truckloads of things behind their names and who do really shitty jobs. So, not good work. And, doctors bury their mistakes and you never get a refund. So I'm just saying, I'm not saying it's not important, but just, I think, be aware that because there are these false things that I think sometimes we can hold on to, and always put yourself in a client's shoes. Are those things really going to make a difference between them dealing with you versus perhaps somebody else? And then, we do sell. I think whether we're selling ourselves or we're selling a service, I mean, hopefully we're not just selling as I started selling 10-year endowments because that was the shorter term, and a family provider and an education provider and a retirement annuity. That's how I started off, cold calling and that kind of thing. We had a discussion about that. We've certainly moved on from those days. But I think we've also got to understand that, at heart, we do sell. We either selling ourselves. If you're just selling a service, I think you've got to be careful, because if you're going to be successful as an advisor, I think you want to be building a long-term relationships. I think that's the beauty of this business. You know, people talk about annuity income. Really, what annuity income is it's harnessing a healthy relationship with the clients over a long period of time. You know, it's keeping them happy. It's building a relationship, and the longer you know them, and the more you know about them, the more value you can add, and you do add. So, although your skills are really important, it's going to be kind of hit and run all the time. You know, you can do a great job, and then okay, next person, then do a great job, next person, then. And I can tell you, if I did that for 30 years, it would be exhausting. It really, because you'd be constantly looking for new clients. So setting ourselves, I think, is the biggest thing, and then nurturing that relationship. Karan, you had your hand up.
No, it was interesting the point that you made earlier of like what you call yourself. I don't know. Well, I started calling myself a broker, and the reason why I started using that term was because whenever I spoke to a younger client or a prospect or something like that, they would always refer to their parents' broker or the parents. They'd never used the word advisor for some reason, and I always, whenever the financial advisor word came up or the title came up, it was especially the service providers, all these big institutions like your Old Mutuals and your Sanlams, they appoint a lot of financial advisors where it's coming to a point where it becomes a bit oversaturated of financial advisors, and it's like they need Tom, Dick, and Harry from the looks of things. In my arena or in my area, which is PE, I'm in Port Elizabeth, but I've seen guys that I went to school with, and they get appointed in these financial advisory roles where they have no experience. Maybe they worked at We Buy Cars or something like that. But I found the way that I can differentiate myself is to find the most, not common, but the most familiar term, and it's a broker. It's because most of the financial advisors that people have come across with, or the people that I've spoken to, are usually tied, or they're not usually a one-stop shop. So, and a broker has a more of a overall service offering where it comes to the short term or multiple providers. And I think that the broker term holds a bit more value from what I'm seeing, because that the kids' parents worked with brokers before, or they refer to my parents' broker. So for them, it's already a familiar term instead of financial advisor. But that's my experience.
Yeah, I think it's whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah.
Really. Everything that you do, you know, if you're comfortable with what you call yourself, if you're comfortable with the process that you take your clients through, then you're gonna do a good job. So I think, yeah, know who you are, know what you want to do, and yeah, and then do it. Okay, also rules of thumb. You know, one of my pet hates, MoneyWeb. Those questions that clients fire in, and then guys answer them. I mean, you know, it's like they send you static details. You know, I've got I've got 2 million rand, and I want to get 50,000 rand a month, and you got to try and answer these questions and all that. And then what kind of comes out of there are rules of thumb. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I do understand where there are guidelines. You know, it's like what percentage drawdown, you know, should you be taking in retirement, and other thing, just the sidelines. Like where I think the industry gets it so wrong is they use the data from annuities, from retirement funds, and they say this is what people are doing. Oh, and it's an absolute disaster. If you work with people who are self-employed, the majority of the retirement funds are not in retirement, of the retirement monies are not in retirement funds. So they could be drawing 12% from a living annuity just because the rest of the money they're getting is from a share portfolio or unit trusts or whatever. But I think rules of thumb we really have to be careful with, because what it kind of says is that everyone's the same. You know, if we all look like Dirk, you're all in your second marriage with 5 kids and 3 grandkids pretty soon. Now, I know none of you look like that. You may or may not in the future, But the fact is, everyone's situation is unique, and everyone's situation is different. So, yeah, I think just be very careful of rules of thumb. And when you come across that with a client, and a client will often ask, say, is a 5% drawdown okay? It's a huge opportunity to go and show how you can add a hell of a lot more value than just defaulting to kind of an industry norm. So, yeah. And then also this thing around marketing, around referrals. You know, do we ask for referrals? When do we ask for referrals? Me, extremely uncomfortable asking for referrals. It's like, I don't know when the timing is right. That's me. Other people I know do it really, really well. For me, what I try and do is I try and be referable. So, you know, I try and create a client experience that hopefully they go away and that they're so blown away that they talk to people about it. You know, they talk to their friends about it, or they talk to their family about it, whatever. That's what but I'm not saying that asking for referrals is incorrect, because some people do it extremely successfully. And I know in the old days when we were taught, you know, we had like a list, like we had to do 100 points, I think it was, or 200 points every week, like so many telephone calls, ask for so many referrals, so many in-face meetings. Well, they were all in-face meetings in those days. And it was all part, and if you did that, then eventually, you know, you would be successful. But I think for me, it's about being referable, but I'm not knocking anyone else who does ask for referrals. Is there anyone in the group that has or does, or how do you guys deal with referrals?
Morning, colleagues. Dumo here. No, Dirk. You know, I'm a new advisor. Working at Sanlam Life in East London. So I think in the profession I'm actually new to the profession as well. So I've only been here like 18 months, 17, 18 months roundabout. So for me, referrals are a big thing. I get your point that, you know, for you, what works is creating that experience for the client, so that then the client becomes your marketing mouthpiece, sort of like, you know. So I think for me, you know, I usually take referrals or ask for referrals after I have closed the business successfully. And yeah, they've been, it's okay. The results are moderate, if anything. But for me, referrals are still a big thing, primarily because I'm relatively new to the business. I'm still trying to find my feet in terms of what type of an advisor would I like to be in the near future. So yeah, I think for me, I'm still sticking to the old rules: cold calling, using social media, and obviously referral sourcing.
Great, Dumo. Well done on the cold calling, my friend. I know how hard that is, but it's character building, and I promise you, if you do that, you will be successful in whatever that means in your mind. Listen, referrals are the best source of business, because, you know, someone walks in, someone's already spoken positively about you. So I mean, I love referrals, and like where I am now after all these years, I am fortunate that I do get referrals. You know, so I think I was kind of relating to how do we go about, do we ask for them or whatever. So, but I think whatever you're comfortable with there, absolutely do. But my big point there is, I think, just try and be referable. Like, you know, if you're when you decide you're gonna work with a client, blow their socks off, absolutely, in every single way that you can, and make it very difficult for them not to talk about that experience, and also makes the work that we do so much more enjoyable, you know, and so much more rewarding. You know, there are numbers around as to success, or how many people actually stay in the industry, because before you become a professional, it is an industry. Yeah, the numbers I know between 70 and 85% don't survive the first 3 years. So again, just speaking to how challenging it is to build a career in what we do. And then that kind of leads me into the next point, which is also there's a lot of speak, all these marketing people about niches. And when you're starting off, your niche is anyone who will speak to you. And then as you build the career, you can then find out, I think that it probably narrows because you perhaps get a certain type of person that you work better with, or that you get on better with. But I'm not saying niches are bad. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you will, so Brian, I think maybe for you guys, when you started, maybe a niche was people who want to play fat fee, or people who don't want to work in an AUM model. That might have been part of your entrance, okay? But I think, I think if you kind of know what it is, or you're absolutely passionate about it. I know, Morgan, I see you concentrating very much on the boaties. I think it's absolutely great. So like if you're going to do that, but also if you don't have something that naturally kind of comes to you, where you feel really comfortable, and where, because of your history or your situation, you can really help those type of people, then don't knock yourself over if you don't have a niche. I know there are a lot of big companies, some of my mates in London, where they'll say publicly, this is their niche, this is who they work with. And when you go and ask them, 40% of their clients are the niche. 60% of their clients who are friends of those people and who have come from that. So having a niche is kind of, I think it's also, it's something you're comfortable with. And, if you can add a lot of value, and again, if you're comfortable, you'll do a great job. So I think understand what we mean by a niche. If you do have one, great. If you don't have one, it's not the end of the world. And when you're starting off, literally, in our days, it was the mirror test. If someone breathed onto a mirror and it missed it up, they were a potential client. And if that's where you start, there's nothing wrong with that. Trust me, it just builds character. Brendan.
Yeah, Dirk, I got asked this question in the last round of the financial planner of the year. They said, who's your niche client? Who do you want to work with? And I said that I want to work with people who want to make a difference and change their lives, and who are willing to engage, and who want to be, they're going to, obviously there's a lot of work I need to do to get them involved in the process, and, get them committed to the process. But I want people who are there to work, and to me, it doesn't matter what profession they do, where they come from, what age profile they are. If they're there to work and they're willing to pay the fee and engage, then I'm happy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree completely. And as I said, it will change. I mean, I'm at a stage after 35 years of my life where I can be a bit more selective. So I certainly won't work with anyone who's difficult. And my difficult could be different to your difficult, Brendan, because we're very different people. So, and I still make the mistake of taking them on, because I think I can save them. I think I can make a difference because I can see where I can help them. But, when you start getting a little tired, you do realize that there are actually some people that, regardless, we had a client who left us with a lot of money recently. And it was like, God looks after you, because we replaced that within 2 weeks. From speaking from a financial viewpoint. But I tell you, the day when I got notification, I went to open a really good bottle of wine and put a good ribeye on the bride, because I felt such relief that I wasn't going to have, when you wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning, having these anxious moments because the client hasn't replied to the last 3 emails or WhatsApps, and you think something's going on, but you're not sure, and she's just actually a bitch, and he's not strong enough to stand up to her. We have those people, and you make the mistake of still trying to work with them. So I think, again, coming back to the point of work with people that you're comfortable with, and if that is your niche, regardless of what they do, then fantastic. Anyone else on that, on niches?
Dirk,
can just add something just from my short experience so far with choosing the niche that I've gone with at the moment. I kind of did that because I had the backstory, and it just felt natural. And it was quite stressful in terms of doing that, just start trying to do the personal branding a bit and that. But from doing that, even though from a social aspect, it said that I only work with that type of niche, I've actually had their friends that are other South Africans that just earn in dollar or euro or pounds that have reached out to me because they say, well, it's kind of a similar type of setup. So just doing that has actually opened up doors to more clients than it was when I didn't even have any specific niche. So, and I wanted to try for now, start off with becoming the go-to person for South African yachties. And then from there, well, this is my strategy. And then from there, kind of expand laterally. Because I've also got some friends, that they, the younger agency owners that their businesses are based in America and that, and they earning a lot of money, where I must have started through my friend helping some of those Africans that are doing that and living abroad and that. So, it's actually opened more doors than it was before when I was just kind of for everyone. And those yachties that come to me say, well, they chose me because that's what they say. Go look at my profile and they're like, well, I'm rather going to choose a person that looks like they're best suited for me than someone else. So it's actually been, and that was stepping out of my comfort zone, and it's going great so far. So that's my experience.
Well done. I see your stuff you put out. I think it's absolutely brilliant. And that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying they're good or bad. I'm saying don't listen to people who say you have to have one or you're in trouble. Like that's all. And you stepped out of your comfort zone. You've picked a team. You can't support USA and Europe in the Ryder Cup. You got to jump in with one of them. Hopefully it's not USA. And but it's not always easy to do that. But as you've learned now, it doesn't mean that that's all you deal with. But I think becoming like the go-to person, like that is so important. I mean, that's what I want to do over here. It's like I want to be in this region. When people think financial planning, I just want one brand that they think of. That's it. So I think what it does, it helps you give you a lot more focus around the marketing that you do, whether it be events or whether it be stuff you put out there or things that you sponsor or advertise. So yeah, well done on it, Morgan, and thanks for sharing that.
Thank you.
Tim, you're next.
Thanks, Dirk. We often sit with planners who struggle with this niche question and don't know where to dip their toes. And it's generally guys who've been coming from that little joke you said earlier, Dirk, if they steam up the mirror, we'll work with them. And now you suddenly ask them in a strategy meeting, so who's your ideal client? And it's not a question they actually are ready to answer. And so they need kind of well, what's the next step? Well, how can I start to approach this? Because they would love to. They'd love to have a niche. They'd love to be in a space where they're working with the right person. And so I like to then, because I always approach strategy with the 5 W's and the H. And when it comes to communication strategy and using the words like you're saying earlier, what do you call yourself? Karen, what you're talking about with why you use the word broker, that's an excellent motivation for using that word, because you want to use words that resonate with people and connect them to the value they are looking for. And that is a journey, because they will learn more words as they're sitting with you, and that conversation will change, and you will learn more words as you're sitting with them. And so if we look at this, I would look at the first 3 W's, which is the who, the what, and the why. And the who is not just your ideal client, but the who is who you are as well. And that's always the first thing I say to advisors is when you're trying to understand your niche, look at who you are, who you're married to, who you live with, who your parents are, who your friends are. What things do they do? And Brendan, I loved what you said, that it's actually more about the values of the person or the aspirations of the person that attracts you to your ideal client. And then that helps you step out of the model of, or the mode and the approach of, or, I just want to work with accountants, lawyers, and doctors, because that's, whenever I speak to guys and they say, their first words are high net worth individuals, those are my ideal clients. And I say, well, that's not narrow enough, and that's also not necessarily the right person for you. Why is it a high net worth individual? And it always comes down to the money. And Derek Smurenberg would always say, is your client, or is their money your client? And again, Dirk, as you've been saying all along in this whole session, neither one of those answers are right or wrong, but it just helps you understand what your motivations are and what you're doing here. And when you're looking for a niche, when you're looking for an ideal client, also when you go on social media is not about reaching more people. Social media is about reaching the right people. And you can't reach the right people if you don't know who you are and who you want to talk to. And so 2 words that also I love are empowering and growth. So when you're looking at value, what is going to empower you and what's going to empower your clients and what's going to lead to growth? And I know Brian Foster always kind of used to drill this, is like, if you're not growing as a person, you're not going to be able to help your clients grow as well. And that's why it becomes such a rewarding journey.
That's you're quite right. I mean, as I said, I'm at my age, and I'm still, if I have to sit back and just do the same thing day after day, I will go crazy. You don't need me to get bored. So you've got to carry on trying to improve yourself. You've got to carry on growing in different ways, and then part of that can be in obviously financial growth, but financial growth is the result of you growing your value proposition, the way that you work and how you work and what you do. But yes, I understand you got to get to a place before you can start doing that. But thanks, Tim. Yeah. Peter, you got your hand up.
Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone is well. I've done quite a lot of research on this niching thing, creating content for a couple of years now. And what I found was there's a couple of books on the concept between red oceans and blue oceans. So a red ocean is something where everyone is competing against each other. It's very vague. I'm a financial planner. I help people take care of their money. Great stuff. Everyone does that. You're competing against everyone else, and it's a very difficult game to play. One that you'll probably lose out, especially if you are still new in the industry, because you're competing with people that has more experience, more knowledge, more skills than you. So the concept behind a blue ocean is to rather say, instead of being a small fish in a big pond, try and be a big fish in a small pond. And especially in today's day and age with the internet, I see kind of the social media concept. It doesn't exist anymore, because when we used to sign up for Facebook, you followed your friends and family and you saw their posts. That doesn't exist anymore. It's now more content preference type of algorithms. People watch content that they like, and the algorithms understand you as a profile, and they'll show you stuff that you like. So from a marketing perspective, if you're very clear on the avatar person that you like to serve and you create content based off that, you will speak to the right people. And where it used to be that in a content space, people that were considered successful had like millions of followers, it doesn't exist anymore, because now you've got very small pockets of communities of people that are serving like a very specific problem, and they will then generate calls, intro calls, get clients, and you can have a YouTube channel of a couple hundred subscribers and you can have a very successful business. So I think we're in a very unique place now where you can actually craft out a very specific person that you'd like to speak to. You can create your marketing message very direct at this person and use 1 or 2 social media platforms, and you can build a very successful business. It takes a little bit longer because it's a bit of a slower build, but I think long term it's more sustainable. And also, if you know you're serving and how you would like to serve them, you can map out your process step by step, 20, 30, 40 steps, and you can then create your business model, your client experience, so that when you do get that ideal client in front of you, every person you give the same journey, the same experience, they love what you do. They tell people that are like them to go to you, and that's your ideal client. Because I also tend to find that referrals are nice. It's nice to get business, but someone that might be your ideal client might refer someone that's not your ideal client, and then you kind of feel obligated to take them on, because you're trying to be nice, and then that whole other can of worms gets opened up of taking on a client that you shouldn't have. But if you've got a very specific person you're serving and you've got a very specific way that you serve them, chances are they will refer people that would like that same experience. And then from a business point of view, you're saving time, you're more efficient, you're giving the same type of service, and long-term sustainability is much more, so you're much more able to then build that. So I think I agree. It's not like there's no one best way to do it. It's not like you have to. But I do think as you gain experience and as you kind of map out who you'd like to work with and who you don't, it does make sense to start and carve out that specific type of person. And I mean, to be honest, there's so many potential clients out there. You really don't need to service everyone. You can service maybe 100 or 120 odd clients, and you've got a successful business. So you just need to try and find those. We like to refer to as seats on the bus. There's only so many seats on the bus, and if you fill them with people that you don't like or that you don't really can serve, you're just building resentment towards them. So you have to be intentional with how you put them on. But yeah, that comes with time and experience to really get clear on who that person is, because you also have to speak to different people to narrow down who you like to work with. So yeah, it's just my 2 cents on that.
Yeah, no, thanks, Peter. And I mean, you've done exceptionally well in that, so really well done on that. And I think, Karan, what is important, Peter touched on it, is before you can look at building any sort of niche or kind of trying to pinpoint the kind of client that you'd like to work with, you first have to know what you're giving. So you have to have a process. I know you've been on and off the group, but we've been through this before a few times, but you have to have your process that is repeatable to every single client, regardless of how much money they have, what their age is, because that is your business. You know, if I'm going to build a house and I phone an architect or a builder, if they don't come to me and say, look, okay, this is step 1, step 2, step 3, I'm kind of nervous, because then they're flying from the seat of their pants, which probably means they're probably a fly-by-nighter. So if I go to someone, and even though it irritates me, we need this information, we need to do this, then this, then this, then I'm going to be way more comfortable, because I can feel, okay, this person understands, they have a process. So I think making sure that, and it can be a very simple process, but you have to have something that is absolutely repeatable, because then that's kind of your little value of your value offering, and then it will grow and it will change, as you progress in your career. And yeah, Peter, Nick Murray, who I love, he calls it, you have your arc, and there are, however many you choose, that 100 or 120 exclusive suites on your arc, and who you're going to let in. One bad apple will spoil the whole experience. So you be very selective with who you let in, and you get to a point that if 120 is your number, you might have to put someone in a lifeboat because someone else is coming in who's better for the whole community. So, but yeah, I think that way of looking at it, it's like, instead of saying, and I know it's difficult when you start, but like, because we're looking for clients, but you've got to think about, okay, who do I actually want to work with? Who treats me respectfully and values what I do? There is no way that if someone is disrespectful to you, that you're going to be able to build a positive relationship, because you start off on the back foot. It's got to be mutually respectful. Without respect, there's no relationship, whether it's business or personal, that's ever going to work out well in the long run. Okay, another thing is there's so much talk about risk profiling, and a lot of it is because it's a compliance issue, because like most industries, I think heads of industries are very often like governments. They've lost connection with the people. So they say they're doing it for the people, but most times they're doing it to keep their job. And they've got to be doing something. So they'll rather be doing something than be seen to be doing nothing. And very often, because they haven't been in our positions, they end up doing stuff that is completely meaningless to us. And risk profiling is one of those things, because I think it's just it was really easy when there have been market crashes and people have lost money. You know, they default to this person was in the wrong risk profile portfolio. You know, so unless they went to some private equity deal or they did something, they invested with Maureen Clifford where they were going to get 20% a month or something else. You know, to me that's not really financial. Those aren't financial instruments or advice. But you know, for me, real risk is outliving your money. You know, it's not being able to live the best life that you can. It's dying with too much money because it means you haven't spent it. You know, those are the real risks that we should be aware of. But the industry uses language. It's like on funds, for instance. A high risk portfolio is a fund with 100% equity. Okay. Now, all of us know that the only investment that successfully outperforms inflation over the long term is equity. Okay. If you're targeting inflation +4, what you're actually doing is you're targeting to underperform the JSE. That's what you're targeting. And if it relates to a plan, that's not necessarily the end of the world. But we really need to understand it. If we go into a low risk portfolio, which has 60% cash and bonds, 40% equity, we are guaranteed to underperform the market. And there's a very good chance depending on what vehicle it's in, we might not even outperform inflation. Okay. That's why we don't keep money in cash. But yet the market portrays that as a low risk portfolio. But if someone retires at 60 and they've got a 30 to 40 year time horizon when they're going to live, one of them, and that's realistic these days, we guarantee to just get rid of a whole lot of potential wealth by having them in what the market calls a low risk portfolio. So we need to understand that. I'm not saying that people have different reactions to volatility, but what we need to do, if we're going to do our job properly, we need to get our clients to understand the difference between risk and volatility, and that volatility is actually our friend. You know, especially if you're investing on a monthly basis, because you're buying units or shares when prices are up and when prices are low, because very often prices are low and then they go up and you're benefiting from that. So we really need to get right in our minds. If you're dealing with a client and you're talking high risk as in a lot of equity and low risk as in low equity, you're going to have a problem down the line. Because they're going to say, well, I'm retired or I'm 70, I should be low risk. And we say, well, Mr. Client, you could be around for another 20 years. Okay. And there is no 10-year period where the equity market hasn't been positive. So the whole risk profiling thing, and the reason it was created is because it covers the institution's asses very simply. Okay. Pension fund, what your choices, high, medium, low risk. I mean, the worst thing they've ever done and I'll get kickback from us, but that doesn't matter, is life stage investing in pension funds. As people near retirement, and that retirement age on that fund, it could be 57, it could be 60, it could be 63, it could be 65. But as they're near retirement, they start offloading equity. Now, what happens if the markets drop 30% and your birthday happens to be in March, in the year that COVID started? The markets dropped 30%. And now automatically they sell 10% of your equity portfolio. So they cement that loss. I mean, I understand why it's been done. It's been done to cover institution trustees' asses because they don't want to have difficult conversations. And I know they say, well, the general public. But if the general public, in my view, is educated properly, then they would have been taught that low risk and high risk are actually opposite things. So, Becky, I see you've got your hand up. I think, Becky, you aren't actuary, so you're probably going to learn based on this, but go for it.
Yeah, no, so I mean, I agree with you, Dick. I mean, the reality of the matter is that the risk profiles were mostly a compliance thing, right? So it's probably a combination of the industry and probably even the regulator as well, sort of like finding a bit of a lazy way of solving a very complex issue. So, but the point I wanted to make though is that I think the process can still be valuable if just done differently. And I think for me, you've got to differentiate, you've got to split the risk profile into three individual components. So for example, if you look at something like risk required, risk capacity, and risk tolerance. So those three things in total make up a risk profile. But then the challenge with most of the questionnaires in the industry is that they just sort of mix up all of those three things together. The client is totally confused. Most clients don't understand what you're trying to do with the risk profile, and it's all sort of obvious to the client that it's some sort of thing we just have to do, but it's not adding value. And I think the real value for our industry now is way with proper expertise. So let's take, for example, risk required, exactly like you said now, Dick. This is a mathematical thing. You can actually calculate what return the client needs above inflation or absolute returns to be able to meet their goals. So if you know the client needs inflation plus 5% or 6%, right? Then there's a certain way you need to invest to be able to meet that goal. That might or might not relate with the client's risk tolerance or risk capacity. So I think this is where, for example, conversations around things like financial coaching now comes into play because the reality of the matter is that it's not easy to sort of have the time to do these things sort of properly and have the tools, sometimes even have the expertise to actually do it properly, right? And I agree with you there. I mean, so if you think about the other thing as well is, for me, your strategic asset allocation is actually the biggest factor towards what you're going to return over the long term. So I mean, often when you look at the industry, most of what is happening in the industry is actually noise. I mean, I did a session like a month or two ago, and I was talking about money-weighted returns versus time-weighted returns. It's actually incredible how few people in the industry talk about the difference between those two things. Because most of what we hear in the industry is, this is what my fund did. But that does not translate to what the client actually gets. What the client gets is internal rate of return, which is a money-weighted return, which is actually quite a complex thing because you actually have to also do asset liability matching, for example. So I agree. If you talk about, for example, this thing about this concept in retirement funds towards retirement. I mean, if that is done divorced from what the client is going to do after they've retired, I mean, it's absolutely crazy stuff. Because if you are going to go back into a living annuity, why would you de-risk out of the markets and then go back into the markets again when you go into a living annuity? Absolutely makes no sense. So I mean, if you de-risking like that because you're going to go into a fixed to sort of like buy a life annuity, there could be some rationale there to then say, as you're going towards the market, towards retirement, you don't want to take a big knock, which you then can't recover because you then have to buy a life annuity and all your money is obviously gone, at the point of entry. But if you're going into a living annuity, it's a totally different thing. So I think the point I'm trying to make is that, and that's why personally I like using model portfolios because you can actually do better asset liability matching, making sure that each goal or even each requirement within the client's overall sort of objectives is matched to the particular model that you're doing. And that model has got, an asset allocation that speaks to the client's required return. And also you can then explain concepts like volatility as well. So for example, if a client is serving towards legacy within the living annuity portion, that portion can actually be invested all in equities, right? Because short-term volatility does not matter, and you can then explain to say this bucket we're not going to touch it for the next 10 years, right? So concepts like that. So I agree with you, Dirk. I mean, it's a very complex concept because you have to overlay, investment alpha and financial planning alpha, and the ability to then layer, financial advice, financial coaching, financial planning, all of those concepts together. And I think because of that complexity, a lot of what the industry then does is find simple ways to solve complex issues, but actually create more problems than they solve by just sort of creating sort of like rule of thumbs to say, if it's like this, you just do it like this sort of thing without going into the nuance. And I think the fact that, the group here, people are actually interested in actually doing good work for clients and go into this detail is actually quite key. I mean, I've said a mouthful there, but I think generally speaking, I agree with you that most of the risk profiles historically in the industry have been quite terrible. But at the same time, it's not an easy thing to solve for. And to solve it and do it properly, you've got to do a lot of work. And also, you know, sometimes advisors don't want to do that additional work. Sometimes they don't even have the skills or the tools to do it properly. So there's a lot of moving parts there. I hope that adds a little bit.
Yeah, no, Becky, I agree, and that is my. Yeah, I think a part of it, again, it's like, do we want to be lazy advisors or do we want to be good advisors? And really, it's just fighting against a different kind of education. So, you know, part of our onboarding process is explaining these concepts, because people walk in with what they've learned, what they've read, what they've heard people talk about. And where I would just say the industry's done these things not to simplify it. The industry's done these things to play to their playbook. Okay, they're able to create all these different funds. So they create a problem and then they create a solution, and it serves. So they can just say, oh, but you filled in this questionnaire, that's why you're in this fund or whatever. And you're quite right. It doesn't relate to their personal situation at all. So again, this is an opportunity where the client walks in and says, I'm high or medium or low risk. See it as an opportunity to say, like, can we have a discussion about what this means? And what is real risk? And why do you think that? Because very often, if you dig a little bit deeper, you will find that there will be one instance, maybe, you know, their dad bought into data at the wrong time, or they've gone into something where they've lost all their money and they don't really understand what really happened. But they've seen the personal effect that that's had, or the anxiety that that's brought to someone that they know. And by not being a lazy advisor, by digging a bit deeper and then educating them. And I think we can really simplify it. Again, go read Nick Murray. I promise you, he simplifies it. And but I think, again, that is how much work are we prepared to do for our clients? How much do we care about them? And also, I agree with you, with different needs, you are able to kind of, even though the bucketing thing, according to the actuaries, isn't the most effective way in the long term, the bucketing thing can talk to managing a client's risk expectation, because it gives them a bit of security that they know they've got income sorted out for the next 4 or 5 years. And then, you know, we can do that. So yeah. Brendan, you got your hand up.
Yeah, Dirk, I think you covered a lot of what I was about to say. I just, for me, the risk profiling has always been an opportunity. It's an educational opportunity, and it's also a really good way to know your client, get to know your client. So it preempts those when you have a big market event down the line. Like, if it's a conservative client, the chances are that they're probably going to call me. And they're going to be worried, and they're going to be concerned. And a lot of people, especially the conservative clients, come to you with a mindset. A lot of people compare to like bank type products, cash and money market bonds, maybe. And what I see it as, and you know, like Becky said, and like you've said as well, is that you've got to put in the work, but it's probably the best opportunity you're going to have to educate the client and to show them that, okay, cool, bank deposits, bonds, well, that's this above inflation long term. Let's run that scenario. I'll show you that that's probably not going to work. And then I'll show you what a more aggressive or a more volatile portfolio can do for you. And this is the outcome. And just to show them the importance of having that proper allocation to growth assets. And you just can't, there's no way around it unless the client is very conservative and incredibly wealthy, which is a very rare combination. They need to take, like Becky said, there needs to be an amount of risk that they're required to take, and we have to do our best to prepare them for that. And what I also find with a lot of these lower equity, lower volatility type solutions is they don't have a proper allocation to offshore investments. The offshore investment allocation tends to be incredibly low. So, and that also is a disservice to the client. So yeah, you've got to know who's sitting across from you, and you've got to try and take what they want to do, what they want to achieve, and do what you have to do to educate them, to get them comfortable with what they need to do in order to achieve that.
Yeah, I think we've got to, again, it speaks to the fact that people's lives change. Okay, and that's why we need a review, not because compliance says we have to. It's because we need to know what's changing enough. Guys, we've all got meetings to run to, including me. Thanks so much. Thanks for trusting me and putting your cameras on. It was a great session. And we'll see you next month. Cheers, guys.
Appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
Cheers. Thanks all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Bye, colleagues.